Hi there, I'm John Hyatt. I've done a previous video about my grandfather Lemuel Lee Hyatt, who participated in the United States punitive expedition into Mexico, which was a result of an attack by the Mexican bandit Pancho Villa against the town of Columbus, New Mexico. Pancho Villa crossed the border and attacked the town, and he was hoping to gain some political advantage out of it. He killed some American citizens. A large number of his own uh, troops, bandits, whatever you want to call them, were killed. A lot more of his people were killed than of the Americans, but it was enough to attract the attention of President Wilson and the United States. And something had to be done. So my grandfather was one of the National Guardsmen. I think he was probably Georgia National Guard, who was then federalized and came into the United States Army and was sent to Fort Bliss, Texas. Um, this is my grandfather, Lemuel Lee Hyatt, in his cavalry uniform. He was in the cavalry when cavalry meant horses. I have another photo of him. This is him and his buddies with a little Chihuahua dog and puppy. And I think this was also taken at Fort Bliss, Texas. My grandfather ended up as a sergeant. So he was a non-commissioned officer. But he participated in this expedition against Pancho Villa. There's a lot of things we don't know about his service in that expedition. The reason we don't know is because the United States Army records, the VA records, that were housed here in St. Louis in a gigantic building, burned down in 1973. And when that building burned, 80% of all the military records for the soldiers who served in World War I and later were destroyed permanently. So there are a lot of things about his service that we may never know. I know that he was very proud of his service. He had the erect bearing of a horseman, of a cavalryman, and he carried that with him all of his life. He was very proud of his service for the United States, and I'm proud of him. Uh, Both my grandfathers served. My other grandfather on the Gilmer side went to France. However, my Hyatt grandfather, Lim, um, did not go to France. Instead, he was tasked with training soldiers to go to France. So whether my grandpa Hyatt trained my grandpa Gilmer, I don't guess we'll know. But at any rate, that's what he did. There's also another unusual and unique thing about the period in which my grandfather served and his role as a cavalryman. So in 1913, the United States adopted the last cavalry saber intended to be used for combat that would be adopted by any Western nation. So the saber that was made at that time was the 1913 United States Cavalry saber, and it was issued to cavalrymen in the expedition against Pancho Villa. And my grandpa was in the United States 15th Cavalry, and we know that members of the 15th Cavalry at some point did carry that saber. And it is an unusual weapon. and I'd like to show it to you. Now, this is not the one that belonged to my grandfather, unfortunately. I'm sure that was given back when he was discharged, but I was able to acquire this one on the collector market. And I just want to show you what it is. First of all, the name of it. This is officially called the 1913 United States Cavalry Saber, but what it is commonly called by collectors, well, and then also, was called the Patton Saber. Yes, that Patton, George S. Patton, that was portrayed in the movie with George C. Scott, who was the commander of tanks in World War II. That Patton, he designed this sword. This sword, it's a real beast. The blade is a full 36 inches long. It is a very long and a very strong and very powerful blade. And there are videos on YouTube, if you want to look them up, of people taking this blade and chopping up watermelons and things with it. Believe me, it is not a ceremonial sword. It is not made to be pretty. In my estimation, this would take your head clean off. It's really impressive. So how did George S. Patton end up designing a cavalry saber? Well, back in 1913, and also during the expedition against Pancho Villa, which George S. Patton participated in, he was a second lieutenant. He was not a general, and he wasn't anybody that special, except that he had been an Olympic athlete. So George S. Patton was in the 1912 Olympics, and he participated or competed in the pentathlon. He did not win. He came in fourth place. He did not medal. But that was actually because of his pistol shooting. He was graded poorly. That's somewhat controversial as to why he got a poor grade on his pistol shooting. But part of the pentathlon is fencing. And George S. Patton was an Olympic fencer. And he competed, and he was one. He scored very high in fencing. I think he came in second place. Had the medal been just for fencing, Patton would have gotten a silver medal. But as it was, he did well in the pentathlon, and the United States was proud of him. The Olympics took place in Sweden, and all the people that got the top medals were Swedish. And so he didn't make it, but he did well. So after he participated in the Olympics, he went to France to the French cavalry school at Saumur. And he studied cavalry, horse cavalry, and the use of the sword at Saumur. One thing you'll notice about the Patton saber is it's straight. It's completely straight. It's not curved. A lot of times when we think of a cavalry saber, we think of a curved sword. This is a straight sword. So there's sort of two schools of cavalry saber. The light cavalry usually carries the curved saber, but these straight swords were the ones that were used by what is called the heavy cavalry. And so particularly in Napoleon's army, those people were called cuirassiers, and they actually wore a metal breastplate. but they carried these long, heavy, straight swords. And the purpose of this sword was not to slash or hack. It's not made for it. It's too heavy for it. You can't do any fancy sword play with this sword because it weighs almost 3 pounds, 2 pounds, 14 ounces. So it's a very heavy sword. The purpose of this sword is to thrust. And that is what Patton emphasized in his method of using this sword that he taught to the U.S. Army is you are supposed to thrust with it. And in fact, you're supposed to thrust and turn your arm like that. And that actually gives you some extra extension in your arm. The point of using the point of it is that using a thrusting sword, you can reach your opponent with the tip of the blade long before somebody who is swinging a curved saber can reach you. So according to Patton, if somebody with a straight sword like this one came up against somebody with a curved cavalry saber, by the time the person with the curved cavalry saber could reach you, he would already have about 5 or 6 inches of this blade embedded in him. So at any rate, I was very impressed with this blade. By the way, this is not the correct scabbard. I was able to get this one and it fits it, but this is actually a Spanish scabbard. The U.S. scabbard for it was very utilitarian. It was made out of wood and wrapped in webbing and varnish, and wasn't very pretty, but it certainly worked well in the desert. Now, was it used? We don't know. We don't know because of the destruction of the records, partly. But then too, in the expedition against Pancho Villa, there really wasn't a lot of combat. Mostly it was chasing through the desert and Pancho Villa running away. And so some people say that the expedition failed in its mission because they did not capture Pancho Villa. But if you actually read the mission statement, the orders for the mission in the Mexican expedition, it doesn't say anything about capturing Pancho Villa. The purpose was to disperse his forces and to make him unable to do any more attacks on the United States. And it was 100% successful in that mission. But Pancho Villa did not get caught. He did die not long after. Somebody else shot him, and yeah, he ended up dying of a wound, but it wasn't anything that the United States did. So at any rate, so I just was really interested in this sword. I think it's quite possible that my grandfather, Lemuel Lee Hyatt, carried this very unusual weapon during the Mexican expedition. And I think it's an incredible blade. It has an amazing story behind it, and I was just fascinated by it. And this one's mine.